Let me back up a little bit, and then we're going to get to the default. You know, there are millions of normal Americans who don't spend their whole lives reading this stuff. You know, you and I have got to get involved deeply. I want to back it up a little bit and explain to people really what's going on. Number one, when Republicans say that the Democratic caucus has not compromised, that's an absolute lie. I ended up voting for a very, very, very bad budget of $986 billion, which continued the sequestration. I voted for it because my understanding was that the Democratic leadership had an agreement with Boehner that that would be the clean continuing resolution. It was the Republican budget, Ed. A major compromise was made. Boehner told Majority Leader Reid that's what he wanted. And then his extreme right-wing people said, no, that's not enough. We want more. So, number one, major compromise has been made by the Democrats. Number two, very simply, and this point has been made, is that in the House of Representatives now, we believe there are the votes, a majority of the members of the House, virtually all Democrats, some non-extremist Republicans, who understand that it is terribly important that we reopen the government. The votes are there. If Boehner this afternoon were to say, I am bringing the Senate bill to the floor of the House, we believe the votes are there. Government would be reopened today. Thirdly, what everybody has got to understand, New York Times had a good article on this on Sunday, and I've mentioned this to you before. This is the tip of the iceberg. This is not about Obamacare. Of course they hate Obamacare. Of course they don't want to see 20 million more Americans getting health insurance. And they don't want to see us do away with pre-existing conditions and all that stuff. This goes a lot beyond that. If you read an editorial today in the Wall Street Journal by Paul Ryan, who was the vice presidential candidate of the Republicans in the last election, what they now want to do is cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So we can reach an agreement with them if we annul the election. Ryan lost by 5 million votes, but he's saying, let's forget about that. Yeah, I lost the election. Yeah, the Republicans lost 2 seats in the Senate in the last election. Yeah, we lost seats in the House. Yeah, the Democrats got more votes than we did in the House. Forget all of that. We now are in a position to blackmail the United States government, and we are going to push through the agenda that we campaigned on and that we lost. And what the New York Times talked about, and this is a very important point to understand, is this shutdown did not occur just a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't Ted Cruz or somebody else who had this bright idea. This shutdown for the government and the threat about default, to get to your point, that was discussed the day after the election when Obama won re-election. A group of right-wing extremists, people that will have, like the Koch brothers, hundreds of millions of dollars behind them, they are saying, look, we are prepared to have our people, the people we fund in the House of Representatives, shut down the government in order to get our way. So this is a long-term plan. It's pushing a right-wing extremist agenda. Now, you raise, appropriately enough, this issue about the government, the United States government, the largest economy on earth, for the first time in our history, not paying our debts. Now, what the economists tell us, Ed, is that they use the word catastrophic. Economists are fairly, mild-mannered guys, but now they're using the word catastrophic. Nobody knows what will happen because it's never happened before. But you're asking me, do I think these people are crazy enough to go forward? And in order to get their way to maybe precipitate a major worldwide recession, if not a depression, do I think that they are crazy enough to do that? Yeah, I do. I do.
I do too. They have done nothing to make us believe that they won't go over the edge and injure the economy as long as it's on Obama's watch, because they'll play the blame game for years to come. I think that their crowd, wealthy Americans, will be insulated from a default, I think. But Bernie, Senator, how do we resolve this?
I'll tell you how you resolve it, Ed. And to me, it is very, very clear. Again, I know that this is complicated stuff, and I know there are a lot of people, Ed, who are listening to the show and say, oh, God, Sanders, Boehner, the hell with all of them. They're all terrible. Throw them all out. It's all awful. But we have to.
Congress does have a 5% approval rating right now.
Right. So I understand that that's the sentiment.
You're higher than that, though, Senator. I want you to know that.
8% the same. No, but here is the point that people have got to understand, why this is so very, very important. If the president or the Democrats were to succumb to this blackmail, what it would be is a dagger in the heart of the democratic process. Because in a sense, what Paul Ryan is saying is, yeah, I lost the election. It doesn't matter. I want you to implement all the ideas that I campaigned on and that I lost. You know what? The American people do not want to see cuts in Social Security or privatization of Social Security. They don't want to see cuts in Medicare. They don't want to see cuts in Medicaid. They don't want to see the EPA abolished, the Department of Education abolished. They don't want to see the VA privatized. They don't want to see the minimum wage, the concept of the minimum wage, done away with so the people in America could work for $4 an hour. And what these guys are saying, all of that doesn't matter. Now, if we succumb to that right now, if we say, oh, you're right, the election didn't really matter, and we're going to succumb to your blackmail, they will be back next year, and they'll be back the year after that, and elections will have not all that much importance. So that is what is going on here. This is an extreme right-wing agenda. And I'll tell you something, Ed, you and I have chatted about this. Just think about it. You got a family like the Koch brothers. These guys are worth $70 billion. That's a B, not an M. That is more money than anyone can imagine. They're, I believe, the second wealthiest family in America. They have the best health care imaginable. If one of them gets sick, one of them gets cancer, they can get to the best doctors in the world. Can you imagine people like that with all of that wealth spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to deny kids from getting health insurance or people who are sick from being able to go to a doctor? Can you imagine what kind of moral compass these people have in order to get what? More tax breaks? 70 billion, I guess, is not enough. They need 100 billion. I mean, what is that about? It's really literally hard for me to understand how people could be so greedy and so selfish and have so much contempt for their fellow Americans.
I totally agree, Senator, and they're wired differently. There's no question about it. Appreciate your time always, Bernie, and your insight on all of this and what's unfolding. Thanks so much. We'll do it again.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you.
You bet. Senator Bernie Sanders with us here on the Ed Schultz Radio Show.